I thought I would do another little project with the gigantic wide-angle lens that comes with Bryce 7 Pro lenses and filters, a product by Horror myself. And before using the lens in Bryce, I'm going to prepare this, which is just a standard photograph, so that when it's wrapped around a sphere, it will wrap around without any obvious seams. And that can be done fairly easily, and I'm sure it could be done in almost any paint package, but I'm going to use Paint Shop Pro. I'm going to use Image, and I'm going to use canvas size and increase the canvas size so that I've got enough space for this image to be mirrored onto. But first of all, I'm going to get a copy of this image, so press Ctrl C and press Ctrl L. So I've got now another layer which is a copy of that image. Image canvas size, the width is set to twice what the width is now, and the height is what the height is now, and I've got the whole thing when it's over on the left. So now I've got these two images, one on top of the other on the left hand side. If I go image mirror, it'll flip the other image over onto the other side. So I've now got a seamless join here and a seamless join when it's wrapped around there and there. So I'll file save copy as and give it a new file name. It'll ask me if I need to adjust it because it's got layers and I don't want layers, so that's just going to be compressed down into one JPEG. Now I'm going to launch Bryce. Now the reason I can't use Bryce's mapping modes and symmetrical tiling and scaling to create that same effect is a slight bug on the symmetrical mapping mode that creates a visible seam. So this is a better way of doing it. Right, so I create a default Bryce sphere, go into the materials for this sphere, apply to the ambient, create an image texture, go into texture source editor, click on an empty square, load in my big image, check out of that, give it 100% ambient, get rid of the diffuse, change the mapping mode to spherical, check out of there, and then I'll just enlarge that, and I've got this ground plane there which I'm going to use. So I'll get hold of the ground plane and I'll lower it down out the way of the sphere, enlarge the sphere a bit more, and then place the perspective camera at the world center with 0 rotation on the X, Y and Z. So that's in a position to bring in the gigantic wide angle lens, and while I'm doing that I'm going to link the lens to the perspective camera because the camera is now in a position to have the lens fitted. So now the lens will track the camera. Another thing I've got to remember to do is, at the moment this sphere looks rather dull because I'm driving it through the ambient global ambient channel, which its default setting is grey, so I'll take that up to fully white, switch the perspective camera view which is inside and give it a quick render. So it's looking a little bit polluted, and that's because I've got the haze is interfering with the appearance of this. So what I could do is, I'm just going to tilt the camera back so you can see the effect of the wide angle lens system, widen the field of view, is modify the sky. Now I want to incorporate the sky, so I can use the moon in this case to cover up this spot where everything gets pinched together in the sky. So I'm going to go to custom sky, I'm going to turn off the horizon color, but I'll just set it to fully black, and the sky color to fully black, and the sun glow color to fully black, and then I'm going to turn off the fog, the haze and the clouds by holding the Alt key down. So click on fog, haze and clouds. You see the contrast went up in the image then because the haze isn't interfering now. And then I'm going to rotate the sun round so it's underneath the ground, and the moon so it's at the apex. You can't see that at the moment, but what I can do is cheat and make the sphere, if I go into the material for the sphere, I can make it additive, so it's adding onto the background, but the background's fully black, so that will just allow the moon to show through. So that's lightened it up and put the moon, and now I've got the moon as an object in this scene. Whoops, double click on there and that takes me through to the Skylab, which happens when you make very small adjustments. If I use rendering scene, you can see where we are with this. The diffuse value here is shining on the ground plane, so that's why that looks lighter than before. So if I'll just set that back down to 100. If I don't want that to happen, which I don't, I check out of here, switch the overhead view, select the ground plane, go into the material for the ground plane and get rid of the diffuse property, and that will darken the ground area. I mean, there are other things that we can do in the materials to change the response of this. For example, we've got moonlight shining to this scene, but we've got no diffusion in this sphere. If we were to modify the sphere so it had diffuse response and the same picture on it as the ambient channel did, then we'll then get a change in the contrast when the light falls inside it. At the moment the light's not getting into it, it's landing on the outside, but I'll have to remember to make sure that this was transparent, and then the light could get in and come out again. So now we'll get the effects of some lighting effect from the moon on this. And we could also use the images that we use for the background to modify the contrast response, because you can cheat and copy and paste this image into its own alpha channel and then use that alpha channel to drive an effect like diffusion, for example, and that will have the effect of increasing the contrast within the scene, because the light bits that were light will get lighter and the dark bits that were dark will get darker as a result of that. So you can offset various effects against one of them. Just bank the camera around. So you can see by positioning the moon in this background, you can make what was a symmetrical scene less symmetrical. I'm just trying to, it's a bit hard to position things with the wide angle lens active, because things don't always go where you expect them to. So I've got this area going rather bright and this area looking darker. Now you don't even have to stick with the position where the camera is in the middle of this sphere. You can move it so it's asymmetrical, and that will create exaggerated effects. It'll change the way the image is distorted as well. Another thing that will change the angle, the angle across the screen from the camera was that can't remember it. I'll remember it in a second. I'll just have to look at the perspective camera. Field of view, thank you. Right, you can change the field of view by changing the document setup. So if you change the document setup to a 1:1 ratio, that also modifies the field of view. How did I forget that? I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to narrow the field of view now. I've remembered what it's called. So we're focusing on this area here. I'm going to move the sphere around to get a change in distortions. So you can see that where it's getting towards the edge here, which is actually sort of creeping around the back of the camera, because the field of view and the distortion effect is so extreme with this gigantic wide angle lens, then you need fairly high resolution images. This point here is the apex of the sphere, and this point here is the very bottom of the sphere. So you can see that the entire of 180 degrees is fitting between that point and that point. All the rest of this is around the back of the camera, which is why you get such an unusual effect. So there you go. I thought it was another way of using the gigantic wide angle lens in conjunction with your own images in Bryce, and then combining elements of the Bryce sky, and you can experiment with adding haze and fog and stars and things like that. And if you use transparent spheres that with your pictures on them, then you can get those effects to print through. The reason for keeping the ground plane in here, just in case you're wondering, and I suppose I should say, if I hide this ground plane now, you'll see that the sun is under the ground. I don't really want the sun appearing in there because it looks a bit odd with that bright spot there. If you're lucky, you can get the sun and the moon in such a position where they contribute to the scene, but in this case there was nothing there that could have the sunlight on it, so that was the reason for having the ground plane in there, just to hide the sun really. And also, as I hope you can see, is that the render time for this is very short, because there's not actually very much in this scene. All the work's been done just through optics, and you've got the information from your images. So there you go, that's the end of the video. Hope you found that interesting, and if you've got this product, you'll experiment with the gigantic wide angle lens in this way.